So there is an estimate by Wells Fargo that shows that energy earnings, and this would be the companies that produce the gas that goes into our gas tanks, are going to grow by more than 200% this quarter. How does that factor into what Americans are paying at the pump? Is this really about supply and demand, or is this about energy companies trying to take advantage of the situation?
Well, Ryan, there's no doubt that energy companies have been taking advantage of inflation to raise their prices as high as they possibly can. These big oil companies are making money hand over fist. They're showing record profits. There's absolutely no reason they ought to be raising their gas pump prices as fast and as much as they are. That's why we need a windfall profits tax. And again, even the conservative government in Britain has passed windfall profits tax on oil companies. We ought to be doing the same thing here.
And so Democrats have been trying to convince Senator Joe Manchin to get on board with their economic packages. He said that he believes federal spending is the main driver of inflation. I would guess that you feel differently. But what does this mean for the administration's response to historic inflation? First, do you agree with his premise? And second, how does that impact the Biden administration going forward?
Well, no. In fact, federal spending has actually declined in terms of all of those subsidies that were part of stimulus packages before. I mean, those are over. Those are not contributing, obviously, to inflation. There is pent-up demand, as there is all over the world, as the pandemic begins to decline, we hope. But I think that the real question mark hanging over what Joe Manchin is talking about is his refusal to raise taxes on corporations and the wealthy. I mean, if he were really concerned about excess demand in the system, he would be in favor of raising taxes on the wealthy and corporations. That will bring down demand. So it's obviously not the case. I mean, I hate to impute motives to people, but I think that Joe Manchin is, one of the major recipients of big money from big corporations and the wealthy.
You literally wrote the book on this, so you should be able to answer this question. Not to set you up too much, but with prices so high across the board, we all understand the problem at this point. But how do we solve it? What is the most direct solution to this problem?
Well, if you're talking about inflation, Ryan, there are several things we can do. I worry about relying solely on the Federal Reserve Board to raise interest rates because when you have global inflation like we do have right now, and when there are so many companies that are pushing up prices that are essentially doing it in a way that maximizes their own profits but hurts a lot of consumers, having the Fed simply raise interest rates is not going to do very much. It's like pushing on a wet noodle. And the danger there, and I think it is a very profound danger, is that we don't come in for what's called a soft landing. We actually have a crash landing. We may go into a recession if the Fed continues to do what it's doing. And I think next week, there's a lot of evidence that it's going to raise interest rates once again. No, what we need is, in addition to a windfall profits tax, we ought to go back to what we did before the Reagan administration, and that is stop these companies from engaging in stock buybacks. That's what they're doing with all their excess profits. They're just buying back their stock to artificially prop up the stock. Stock prices would be even lower than they are right now without those buybacks. We ought to, in select industries, have some actual price ceilings, from some price controls. This is particularly true in pharmaceuticals and other industries where we see very, very dramatic price increases. So there are many things that can be done without relying solely on the Fed to engineer a recession.